Hi, welcome to Relationship Talk with Laura. Today we're going to talk about another communication trap that trips up many a couple. It is called the competition syndrome, or I like to call it the Mrs Gummidge Syndrome. Who is Mrs Gummidge, you ask me? I'm glad. There's a great novel called David Copperfield. It was written by Charles Dickens, a British 19th century author, best known for A Christmas Carol, which a lot of you have seen, some of you annually. So Mrs. Gummidge is a character in the novel David Copperfield. She is a character who is a widow, and a lovely family takes her in out of the kindness of their hearts. And of course, by our standards, they would be considered poor. But they give her the best seat in their room so that she can sit by the cozy fire. And when it's a chilly day, and they all are kind of suffering a little bit, and recognize that it's particularly chilly and they're cold, Mrs. Gummidge says, "Oh, but it's far worse for me. You see, I am all alone in the world, and so the cold is worse for me, and I have a backache besides." She has to win. She has to be in competition with them. She has no idea their trials. They're the ones the father is earning a living, and she just is sitting there relaxing. And if that wasn't enough, then when they are eating their meager meal of a very bony, tiny little fish, and some are saying in the family they've had better meals, Mrs. Gummidge cries and becomes so dramatic. "Oh, but it's way worse for me. Oh, it's so much worse for me." And that is the Mrs. Gummidge Syndrome. So how does this work in a relationship? I want to tell you the story about Dalton and Emma. Of course, I have changed their names, protect their identity. And so this is the story. They came to me as a couple, no children, had had a pretty good marriage, but all of a sudden they didn't know what was wrong. They just knew that they were both unhappy, and they both felt like the other person didn't love them. So I asked them to tell me about their lives, like a detective trying to find out what was really wrong. Dalton began. "Well, you see, I'm a stockbroker, and it's very stressful day in and day out for me. It's exhausting. I have to be sharp mentally at every moment of every day while I'm trading." To which his wife Emma interrupted him rudely. "What are you talking about? My job is way more stressful than yours. I mean, what are you even saying?" And I said, "Well, what do you do?" "I'm an emergency room nurse, and people's lives hang in the balance. There's blood and guts all over. It's always an emergency to save their lives." To which Dalton interrupts and says, "What are you talking about? As if, don't you realize that my clients' lives hang in the balance also financially? I either make money for them or I could ruin them. And their lives, their financial successes are all on me. I have the most stressful job. If your people are going to die, they're going to die. You can't do anything about it." "Oh, I can't believe you said that," replies Emma. "How terrible of you to think such a thought. It's all up to me. Oftentimes, I'm the first one on the job before the doctor comes in. I've got to hook them up to heart monitors and so on. I'm the one. How dare you say that? I have the worst job by far, and I am stressed out every night." To which we got into a competition of where he says, "That's not true. Yes, it is. No, it isn't. Yes, it is. No, it isn't." And by this time I said, okay, Okay, calm down. Let's go into another part of your lives. Let me hear about what you do for extracurricular activities. And Emma said, well, do you mean do we date? Yes. And she said, yeah, but I'm sick of the dates my husband takes me on. Last week we went ice skating. Ugh. And I fell down at least 100 times. I'm a terrible ice skater. I cannot believe he took me ice skating. To which the husband said, I thought you would like it. How dare you say that? And you fell down 100 times? No, you didn't. I'm the one who fell down 100 times, and I've got the bruises to show it. Hey, do you want me to show you? No, that's okay. Don't show me your bruises. Yes, well, I had it way worse than you did. I spent half the time on my rear end on the ice. You at least had ice skating lessons when you were young. To which Emma had to contradict again and say, that is so not true. What? 1 or 2 lessons count as lessons? I don't think so. Hello. It was just as bad for me. It was worse for me. So I said, okay, once again, let's just consider it a draw. I get the picture. So then we started going through other things. Well, how about your life of sharing the household duties? You're both professionals. You both work all day long. So have you divided up the household duties, and are you satisfied with that? Emma said, are you kidding? I'm the one who does all the work. I'm the one who does all the household activities from cooking to cleaning. To which Dalton chimes in, what? I can't believe you. I'm the one who repairs the sinks when you have a leaky faucet. I'm the one who unclogs the toilet. And who painted out the living room last week? Ugh, Emma says, that is so unfair. We're talking about the day-to-day, not the projects. Ugh, he replies. Once again, the Mrs Gummidge Syndrome. They're competing for who has it the worst. Why do they do that? Because neither one of them feels like they are receiving the love and sympathy that they want. In fact, they're so busy begging for love, kind of like a little doggy, pet me, pet me, pet me, that they don't have time to really appreciate the other person. And so there it was, very simple. The problem of why they felt unloved was because they were unloved. Neither one was giving the other person the kind of love that they needed, which was being listened to and giving them empathy. And they both could have given each other empathy. I'll give you an example. Sometimes my husband and I will end up with a cold at the same time. And when we're kind of complaining, one of us will say, oh, I feel way sicker than you do, honey. And the other one will say, no, honey, I'm way sicker than you. And then the other one will repeat it. I'm sicker. And then one of us will stop and say, oh, you are right. You are so much sicker than I am. I am so sorry you are so sick. Let me open up a can of Campbell's chicken noodle soup. I'll warm it up for you and feed you, and you can go right to bed. And of course, then the other one will laugh and say, oh, I'm sorry, honey. You're just as sick as I am. Let's open up our Campbell's chicken noodle soups together, warm them up in the microwave oven, and go to bed together. We are both miserable, and then we really laugh about it, and we go to bed. So what is that makes that work? It is the antidote, which we will talk about in just a few minutes. But before I do, let's go to our actors, Rika Miller and Spencer Mickelson from Hollywood, California, and watch them and enact a Mrs. Gummidge Syndrome.
I'm really hurting and upset. I mean, my sister came in to town for a whole week to visit our parents, and she didn't even call me. I thought we were over this, and it hurts my heart so much. I really want to be close to my sister, and I don't even really know her kids. And
Come on, it's not that big of a deal. I mean, my mom hasn't visited me in 4 years, and she's visited all of my siblings. It's not that big of a deal. Just get over it. I mean, honestly, my problem's worse.
But honey, it hurts me so bad. I cried myself to sleep last night.
Well, mine hurts me too. It's my mom. My mom doesn't love me the same as my siblings.
Well, my sister doesn't love me. Is that...
But it's your sister.
So my feelings don't matter?
No, I'm just saying that my problem's a little bit bigger. Why can't you recognize that?
Did you notice how both of them were competing right away? When Rika talks about her sister and how her sister ignores her and doesn't give her the kind of love she needs, and when she comes into town, she doesn't visit her, Spencer can't give her any sympathy at all. Instead, he says to her, "Oh, forget about it. My problem is way worse than yours because it's my mother. My mother hasn't visited me for 4 years, and she loves my brother and sister far more than she loves me." So they're competing and weighing which is the worst. And of course then Rika says, "Well, it's my sister." "Well, it's my mother." "It's my sister." "It's my mother." And back and forth they compete with each other for love, for attention. So sad. So now let's look at our actors enact the right way.
I'm just really hurt that my sister came to visit for an entire week and she didn't even call me. I really thought this thing between us was over, and it really hurts.
Honey, I'm sorry. I know what it feels like to not feel loved by family. My mom hasn't visited me out here in 4 years. It's not fun. I'm so sorry you feel bad. I felt really bad about stuff like that before too.
Thanks.
Sure. What can I do for you? Want to go get ice cream?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go.
Okay.
In this scene, we see different body language. Right away, she puts her head on his shoulder. He accepts it. He holds her hands. He gives her love. Now, he does use his own situation of his mother not visiting him for 4 years, but he doesn't do it in competition. Instead, he lets her know that because of the problem that he's had in his life, he understands and he sympathizes with her and he gives her a lot of love. And that's what she wanted. That's what we all want, rather than being in competition with our mate, right? And then, of course, he offers up another antidote, which is, let's go get some ice cream. In other words, he knows she loves it. He wants to cheer her up. So now let's take a look at the antidotes and put that up on the screen. The antidote for the Mrs. Gummidge Syndrome, or the competition syndrome. First, number 1, always listen to your mate and forget about yourself. Forget about your problems. Forget about your stresses, and don't try to compete and make yours better or more important than theirs. Secondly, sympathize with them and then support them in this issue. Make them feel so loved through your sympathy by repeating back that you understand what they're going through. Then, number 3, offer to cheer him or her up with a diversion, a treat, a sport activity, a favorite movie, reading a book together, and anything else you know that would cheer up your mate. Just like in this case, Spencer offered to buy ice cream. Let's go get ice cream to Rika, something to divert her attention, get her mind off her troubles. Then lastly, number 4, sprinkle your conversation with a dose of humor. This is what my husband and I do. Remember I said that sometimes we'll compete with each other about who has the worst cold? But we always sprinkle it with a dose of humor by saying, "You're right, you have it worse than I do." And we make it kind of funny and we laugh about it. And that covers up so much in life, doesn't it? All right, let's go to our questions. My husband is just like your example of competition. If I say that I think I'm coming down with a cold, he says he's coming down with a cold and feels worse than I do, and goes to bed leaving me with putting the kids to bed. It seems unfair that when I'm sick, he is always sicker. Now, I don't believe he is sicker. He just is like a big baby and can't take pain. I have to power through the colds. What should I do about this? I am getting resentful. That's a great question. And what I recommend is that you say to him, "You know, honey, we both feel miserable and there's no use figuring out who's the sickest. But let's take turns. Let's help each other. So maybe I'll go to bed early tonight and you put the kids to bed, or vice versa. But let's help each other to heal." In other words, enact cooperation, and you'll feel much better. Question number 2. I am now a quote-unquote senior, and sometimes I just want to tear out my hair. I get together with my friends of 20 years for lunch once a month, and they are all in competition with each other about whose physical ailments are the worst, just like your Mrs Gummidge Syndrome. They each give lengthy listings of bad heart, lung trouble, gallbladder problems, or backaches. I have arthritis and would like a little sympathy too, but I can't even get a word in edgewise. What should I do? That's kind of a comical scene in my mind, seeing little old ladies, 80 years old, around a table, all talking about their illnesses and competing. Here's my suggestion. Why don't you have a little program that you take to your next lunch? And on it are each person's name. First it says, each person gets to take a turn telling about their illnesses. And the rest of us will give sympathy and we will go around the table. So then each person has a turn. And you might have to go, wait just a minute, she hasn't finished. And then each one of you goes around the circle and says, "I'm so sorry you're going through this. This is really rough on you," or something very kind, supportive, and loving. Then, after you would all have had your turns complaining and receiving love, then how about second on the program is that you go around and list one nice thing that you really like about each friend. Believe me, you will all come out feeling very loved. The next one. How would you know the difference between a narcissist and what you call the Mrs Gummidge Syndrome? Very good question. The reason that you know the difference is because narcissists will never, ever, ever give you any kind of sympathy. They won't give you love in other ways. They only think about themselves. Everything is about themselves, from what they want to do to their life is way worse than yours. Also, they usually want to do extreme things, whereas someone who is just being in competition with you really does love you and tries to do things that would make you happy and right. That's the difference. Number 4, my husband often hits me on the head when I do something that makes him mad, which is every day. When I ask him not to, he says that when he hits me, it is nothing compared to how his father beat him as a boy. Is he just competing with me, or should I just let it go? No, we never tolerate physical abuse. Never. He has no right to beat you on the head now or ever. And this is what I say to that. My hick from the hills.
I don't know about you, honey, but I'd head for the hills. Head for the hills.
And so I believe that I have Rika on the line right now. Hi, Rika.
Hi, Sarah.
Thank you for joining us. On the phone with me right now is Rika Miller, who has a professional career. And we're going to talk to her a little bit about another form of competition. When two people have an equally important career, how on earth do you balance that so you aren't in competition with each other? So Rika, you're an actress, your husband's a businessman. How do you balance these professions out?
Well, really our secret is just being 100% committed to being on the same team. And that may sound simple or silly, but for us what it means, anytime a conflict arises, I don't worry about myself. I think as, what would be best for my husband, because I know without a doubt he's thinking what's best for me. And we've actually found that when we're worried about each other more than ourselves, it usually turns out way better than if I had been all about myself just instead and got my way. He comes up with something that's even more generous than something that I would have asked for selfishly. And it's amazing because, I've had relationships where that wasn't the case, and it was just a constant battle zone except for the times where, we weren't butting heads. We could kind of ignore that issue, but it's a non-issue with us, and really it's just because I can 100% think about him because he has agreed to 100% think about me, and it works.
That's absolutely a fantastic tip for everyone. So what you're saying is rather than competing with each other, you support each other and you think first about the other person and you give 100%. Is that right?
Yes. So if something comes up in a time frame where we only have the ability to do one thing and we both have something, I try to find a way to work out his, and he tries to work out mine, and of course, only one ultimately comes about, but whoever doesn't get to do their thing doesn't feel like they got beaten down and quote-unquote lost.
So it sounds like the kind of competition you have is competing to give each other the right kind of love and support each other.
Absolutely, and we compete on that every day.
Right, but that's a good kind of competition, isn't it? Now,
absolutely.
Now, the other day you had to work very late as you were doing these skits for me for my television show. And so can you tell me what your husband did to support you in this?
Absolutely. Well, he had decided to ride with me. We thought it'd be about an hour, and he was just going to run a couple errands and, while I was in and out. And we ended up going quite a bit longer than that, I think about almost 2 hours.
Right.
And rather than getting upset and huffy and irritated with me and, trying to text me or, hey, are you coming out yet? He decided to do something really fun. He went and got me a little gift bag and just filled it up with some things that I had mentioned in the past week or two would be nice, like a candy bar and a movie, and surprised me with it when I came out.
That is so sweet. How'd that make you feel?
Oh, incredibly loved. I have the best husband in the world. I feel so lucky to be in a relationship with him, and he had fun, and, of course, I showered him with compliments and thank yous, and, he got a lot of brownie points rather than us picking a fight.
You know, what you have said that really impresses me is that you find the good in each other and that you compliment each other a lot. And by complimenting him, you have reinforced that marvelous behavior of supporting you and surprising you with the gifts.
Yeah, and it's always a choice. There's things that come up that are surprising and not always pleasant, and we just always choose to make it as best for each other as we can, and it makes a world of difference on how happy we are. I love it.
You've said something very important, and that is that you make it a choice. Do you believe that? Do you believe that you're choosing to be happy, you're choosing to be supportive? Do you think that people who fall into the Mrs Gummidge Syndrome of where they are competing with each other, that they are making a choice to do that?
Absolutely. And that's hard to swallow, but I can say that because I've been there. I've seen both sides of the coin, and it takes work. Both of the choices take work. and tell you which one's a lot more happy.
Absolutely. If you had some other recommendations, like for example, when you've had a difficult situation that you had to work out together, how did you go about doing that? Do you have a system?
Well, let's see. For my husband, he typically just says, straight out, fact is fact. This is what it is. This is the problem. For me, I'm a little bit more dramatic. I tend to have a little bit more emotion attached to it, so I may need to throw a little bit of a fit first. But my husband knows I am not throwing a fit at him. I'm just expressing my frustration. And because we know, I'm not attacking him, there's, nothing except this is just me and I got to get past this in order to talk about it. He supports me in that. And he says, oh, yeah, that does really stink. Oh, man. Oh, yeah, right. Wow. Put that pillow, whatever it takes. And then I don't feel belittled because I had an emotional response. He doesn't feel upset because he feels he's getting attacked.
Right.
And then we can work towards, an actual solution rather than creating another problem.
That's fantastic. I so appreciate you being on the show with me and sharing with all of our listeners your techniques for avoiding the competition syndrome. Thanks so much, Rika.
Oh, my pleasure. Have a great day, Laura.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Let's one more time bring up our visual on the antidote for the Mrs. Gummidge Syndrome. All right, so number 1 is to listen and forget about yourself. Number 2 is to sympathize and support your mate. Forget about yourself. Give them the kind of love they want, knowing that you'll have your turn another time. Number 3, offer to cheer him or her up with a diversion, a treat, a sport activity, a favorite, a movie, reading a book together, something that will cheer him or her up. And then lastly, number 4, sprinkle it with a sense of humor. Think about something that you can laugh at. So today we have talked about another important communication trap, and that is try to compete with your mate. Competing with your mate for love and attention, when really the answer is give your mate all the love and sympathy and attention that they need, and it surely will come back to you 100-fold. Remember, we mirror the actions of our mate. So this week I'm going to challenge you to watch yourself in your relationships and see, do you compete with other people? And if you do, stop yourself and say, I'm not a Mrs. Gummidge. Remember the antidote, and you will have much happier relationships. Until next week, make it a good week.